Hey everyone, so this is a very personal video to me. I just wanted to analyze some armor sets in Bloodborne, plus two bonus costumes from Elden Ring that have inspired me personally in my fashion design journey. I also wanted to talk about how they connect to the overall storytelling of both games. And of course, anyone who's played any Soulsborne game knows that if I went into every outfit, this video would be hours long. So I'm just going to do a couple which have proved to be of great influence to my personal art and everyday. FromSoft games are notorious for their cryptic lore where dialogue and cutscenes are sparse. Players must instead uncover the lore through the game's visuals. Unlike many other RPGs, FromSoft games are masters of utilizing every aspect of the visuals and storytelling, and this is apparent in every possible outfit you can make your character wear. From the mushroom set in Elden Ring to the choir set of Bloodborne, there's no shortage of lore and possible theories that can be made. To begin, let's start with Bloodborne, where fashion isn't just about looking badass, it's about survival, practicality, and about descent into madness. So, of course, we must touch on the classic, iconic Hunter's set. Lore wise, there isn't much to be said besides it being crafted in the Hunter's workshop as an entirely practical armor used by hunters. This makes sense since the only one who wears the standard hunter's garb is the player character, so it's up to you to make up the lore associated with it. However, undoubtedly it is the symbol of the game and has and will continue to inspire countless designers and cosplayers. And I just think the design is absolutely genius. First of all, its visuals quickly establishes the overall atmosphere of the game. The gothic Victorian aesthetics that allude to the vampire hunter characters such as Van Helsing, with its practical components like belts, bullet holders, and a face covering protecting your identity, not to mention the tattered leathers covered in the blood of beasts. Paired with whatever weapons you are utilizing, the hunter's set creates an unmistakable silhouette. As you will get into more later on, the designers of these games love to show homage to various pieces of media they admire. For the Hunter set in particular, inspiration can be drawn from the 2001 horror film Brother of the Wolf. The bicorn hats and long leather cloaks with high collars are clearly inspired by the film's 1700s setting. The item description states, quote, one of the standard articles of hunter attire fashioned at the workshop, accompanied with a short cape that wipes away blood. This once again alludes to the practicality of this garment, whether or not it would actually work in real life. Lore-wise, the design of the standard hunter's attire is derived from the old hunter Jura, who wears the Ashen Hunter's garb. Many of the hunter's NPCs also wear variants of this traditional set. One of the more unique hunters we meet is Eileen the Crow. She was once a hunter of beasts like the player character, but after emerging from the nightmare, she takes up the job of weeding out and eliminating the corrupted, beastly hunters that prove to be just as much of a nuisance to the story of Bloodborne as the beasts themselves. So I think it's fair to say that Eileen is one of the only noble characters in the game, despite killing her former allies. Her design is pretty on the nose in my opinion, using two design tropes that are very common. So on the nose, in fact, I feel if she didn't have any dialogue, I could tell exactly what her character's purpose was just by looking at her. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, her armor design is derived from the Plague Doctor, whose creepy bird-like hazmat suit originated around 1619. This design trope is often used for foreboding, almost grim reaper characters. But Plague Doctors are not just a sign of death and disease, they are also a hope to the people they were set out to treat. We get the feeling that Eileen genuinely feels bad for her corrupted allies and seeks to cure them by putting them out of their misery. Now, the crow aspect of her character leads to similar themes as the Plague Doctor, a harbinger of death. But it also represents that Eileen is much more intelligent and you could even say friendlier than the other hunters we encounter. She is implied through the game to be very, very old. Besides Gammon, she's probably the oldest hunter we meet, and we get the feeling that she may have once worked alongside the old hunters and watched them firsthand descend into madness. Speaking of madness, Alfred appears to us as first as another friendly NPC like Eileen, a nice escape when first going through the gauntlet that is the Cathedral Ward. But not too much later, we see that Alfred is a zealous follower of Martyr Ligarius, and he will stop at nothing to finish the job that his master started and kill Queen Annalise of the Vile Bloods, which he does so brutally, grinding up her body into mere bits. Now, the game clearly presents Alfred and his actions as evil, but just the term executioner is not necessarily an evil thing. An executioner, historically, is an agent of the law. So according to some ancient code, Alfred's actions may totally be justified. In this context, his friendly appearance and personality when we first meet him is less surprising to me. Moving on to the design itself, it is definitely one of the strangest and impractical in the game. The Ardeo, as it's called in game, is a pyramid helm that he wears. Ardeo means flame and passion in Latin. The name alludes to Alfred's fiery rage against Cainhurst, and passion for his cause, completely covering the face, is taken from historical garments that executioners are often wearing. To cover the face is to retain anonymity and retribution from the followers of whomever you may be executing. Earlier I said Pyramid Head, and obviously this design is based off of the Pyramid Head, a sadistic executioner from the Silent Hill games, which I've never played, but because the design is so iconic, I can't ignore the homage. Moving on to the robes Alfred is wearing. In contrast with his imposing helmet, these robes are clearly meant to be religious in nature. The garb represents a devoted member of the Healing Church, and we see many similar robes throughout the game. In the description of this set, it states, in the words of Martyr Ligarius, quote, "Acts of goodness are not always wise, acts of evil are not always foolish, but regardless, we shall always strive to be good." End quote. It strikes me how, culturally, to most of the characters we see in-game, this quote can apply and be seen as sane. It just points to how fucked up this world is, that one of the most respected religious attire, something designed to be noble with pure white fabric, is representative of such twisted morality. The choir are among the high-ranking members of the Healing Church, clerics and scholars who devote their lives to study at Bergenworth. Derived from the aforementioned executioner's robe, the choir robe is typical clerical fashion: white and black palette, mantle over the shoulders, high collar, and a long skirt. The most interesting aspect of this set is the blindfold cap, allowing me to speak about the trope of eye coverings in Bloodborne and from all FromSoft games as a whole. To the item description, they were the eye covering in honor of their former blind master Willem. Eyes themselves represent insight into the cosmic knowledge of Bloodborne's universe. Master Willem, being blind, symbolizes his rejection of the blood in favor of the pursuit of knowledge through traditional means. He sees the Eldritch truth through his mind and not physically through his eyes. A scholar being blind can also lead to an uninhabited pursuit of truth, no matter the suffering it may cause to the common people of Yharnam. This representation of eyes and the covering of one's eyes is a trend throughout the Souls games. Characters are often subject to prophetic blindness, pursuit of truth, knowledge, and the ignorance of people's suffering. An argument can be made that the members of the choir, the clerics, and scholars can encompass all aspects of the common philosophy surrounding blindness and eyes. Now, on a little side note I wanted to touch on, my most recent project that I finished, but haven't had the chance to do a proper photo shoot for yet, is quite similar Queen Yarnum's design. But here's the thing, I didn't mean for it to be, and halfway through making it I realized, oh shit, this is basically just a Queen Yarnum cosplay. And I ended up getting really disheartened by this realization and stopped working on the piece for a while. That is, until I realized that I shouldn't feel shame when making a piece. For me, the dress I made has a completely different and very personal story associated with it than anything to do with Bloodborne, and it actually ended up looking pretty different anyways. I could probably make a whole video explaining this phenomenon more thoroughly, but as it's been said a million times, every idea has been done, so my advice is don't plagiarize, of course, but understand that most everything we designers do comes from a personal place and should be treated with the same amount of dignity as whatever the inspiration was taken from, and whether it was on purpose or subconscious, like in my case. And I think Souls games are the perfect example of why artists shouldn't feel shame for showing appreciation for what they love. Because as we've seen and will see as I move forward, Miyazaki loves to show homage to his favorite pieces of pop culture and mythology. Anyways, back to Queen Yarnum. I don't have time here today to do a deep dive into her lore, but basically she was the queen of an underground civilization called the Tumerians. She was chosen, much like the Virgin Mary, to bear the child of the Great One Odin. She died, but her and her child's consciousness survived and descended into the nightmare. Her dress, all white, is clearly meant to convey a wedding dress, a symbol of her unconsensual marriage and subsequent impregnation by Odin. But speaking of what I mentioned earlier about design inspiration, her wedding dress is clearly an homage to Lucy's wedding dress from the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula. Vampires being a clear inspiration for the Bloodborne lore, aside from the wedding dress, the part of her design that actually inspires me the most is the blood we see dripping from her bloodstained belly and the shackles still around her hands. Lore-wise, this is because the scholars of Bergenworth recovered her dead body from the Chalice dungeons and tore it open to reveal a stillborn child. Blood as a design aspect has always been fascinating to me, especially how it is usually paired with a pure white dress, symbolizing the unwashable stain on innocence. In Queen Yonim's case, it represents the mutilation often dealt to women's bodies and unborn children, treated like objects instead of something personal and sacred. And although not directly connected lore-wise, it also makes me think of the pain of childbirth and Odin's unconsensual copulation with her, whether it was actually physical or not. So, like I said in the beginning, I'm going to do 2 bonus costume reviews from Elden Ring. I already had a bunch of stuff written about Melania and her knights, so let me just talk about her for a second. Her first design is derived from the Valkyries of Norse mythology, the noble female followers of the patriarchal god Odin. Much in the same way, Melania is the right hand, the blade of her brother, whom she aids in ascension to godhood. Her helm design is also an homage to Kentaro Miura's manga classic Berserk. Her robes are not as interesting in my opinion. In fact, I think they could have done something a bit more with them. However, their tattered, discolored nature shows that Melania's fight has been long and hard, especially after plaguing Radahn with scarlet rot. And I think in many ways, Melania is a character we are meant to take pity on for her chronic disease eating her alive, constant pain, failing cause, and the burden of divinity. In classic Soulsborne storytelling, she is a character way past her prime, so taking this into account, the humble nature of her robes makes sense. They also serve some practicality for her water dancer fighting style, offering less physical defense but maximum movement. In contrast, her golden arm and helm are still polished and noble in appearance. Clearly they mean a great deal to her, being crafted specially by Mikola. Now moving on to her goddess of rot form, Melania is stripped of her clothing, and we see the full extent of the scarlet rot. To me this proves to be of the greatest inspiration. Her body has faced such hardship, becoming unrecognizable as a human form, covered in amphibian-like scales, blinding her, taking her arm, legs, and feet, and even her genitals, yet she is still a goddess, a chosen vessel of an outer god, worshipped by those who understand her pain. Her hair turns into a nest of butterflies, a symbol of transformation and growth, into something so beautiful. Also, the coloring of all the characters in-game is absolutely stunning. I personally base many color palettes on Melania, her followers, and her domain. The twisting tree roots on her arena complementing the butterflies weaving through her air is so stunning. Now onto her noble knights, definitely the coolest looking generic knight NPC we see throughout the game, the Clean Rot Knights. Their ornate golden armor, covered in diverse designs, the white wings crowning their helms, the flowing crimson fur that goes down their neck and from their waistline like the iconic hair of their dear lady, a fitting appearance for the loyal knights of Melania that still continue to fight for her cause despite being exposed to and plagued by the scarlet rot. The wings on their helms and the chest pieces is inspired by their angelic master's helm. While the knights are sworn to Melania, they are also in turn followers of Mikola the Unalloyed, and originally of the Golden Order, noting their golden color scheme and red hair originating with the consort Radagon. I'm just obsessed with Melania and the Clean Rot Knights design, and I shall definitely be using them more as inspiration as I move forward in my fashion journey. So that's it for today. I feel like I barely scratched the surface of these games, but if you're interested, let me know. Also, what are your favorite armor sets from Bloodborne, Elden Ring, or any Soulsborne game? If you enjoyed this dive into the subtle art of fashion storytelling, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more fashion design content, or just whatever I feel like rambling about in the future.